Welcome to SDN Tech Networking Podcast, world's first human-curated AI podcast.
Welcome to our deep dive, everyone. Today we're going way back.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at the history of data breaches.
Oh, yeah?
And we're using an amazing resource to do this, and that is Verizon's DBIR, their Data Breach Investigations Report.
Yes.
We have reports spanning from 2008 all the way to 2024.
That's a lot of data.
It is. It is. I mean, can you imagine back in 2008?
Wow.
I mean, things were so different back then.
The world was a different place.
The iPhone was barely a thing.
Right.
Cloud computing was, in its very, very early stages.
Absolutely.
But data breaches were already happening, and they were already a huge problem. So we're going to kind of use these DBIR reports like a chronicle, like a history of, digital crime.
A digital crime wave.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's start. Why don't you kind of take us back to the late 2000s?
Sure.
What was the landscape like?
Well, if we think back to like 2008, 2009, that era, payment card breaches were like the big thing.
Right.
I mean, attackers were scooping up millions of records by exploiting vulnerabilities.
Like massive numbers.
Massive, massive numbers. I mean, we're talking millions and millions.
Yeah, yeah.
And often these vulnerabilities were found in retail systems.
So it really was like the wild, wild west.
It was a free-for-all. It really was.
Yeah. And, when I think about that time period, the one that really, really stands out in my mind is the TJX breach.
Oh, yeah.
This was in 2008. I mean, this group of hackers, and I'm sure most people listening know this story, but they were led by this guy named Albert Gonzalez.
Oh, yeah.
And they stole, a staggering 45 million credit and debit card numbers.
It was unbelievable. It was a huge wake-up call.
It was. It was. It made businesses realize, whoa.
We need to do something.
We need to protect this stuff.
Yes.
And back then, a lot of the attacks, reading through those early DBIR reports, were what they call opportunistic.
Right.
They were just kind of looking for systems with weak security, and then bam.
They'd find a way in.
They were in.
And they would use tools like RAM scrapers.
What is that?
It's a type of malware that's designed to steal card data in real time from a system's memory.
Oh, wow.
So imagine it like digital pickpocketing. It's happening right under everyone's noses.
Right. Right. And it's so crazy how vulnerable these systems were.
They were.
I mean, but even back then, we started to see signs that the attackers were getting a bit more sophisticated.
Oh, absolutely. Alongside those opportunistic attacks, we also saw the emergence of targeted attacks.
Okay.
And these often involved customized malware.
Okay, so how is that different than the opportunistic?
Well, with the opportunistic attacks, it was really about finding any vulnerability.
Right.
With targeted attacks, they were going after specific organizations, specific individuals, specific data.
So they're picking their targets, doing research.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
And a good example of this is the Heartland Payment Systems breach, which happened in 2009.
Oh, yeah.
Where attackers used a highly sophisticated SQL injection attack to steal millions of card numbers.
Millions.
Millions. And this was a clear indication that attackers were starting to invest more time, more resources to go after high-value targets.
Okay, so not just smash and grab anymore.
No, not at all.
Wow, that is fascinating.
It is.
And it makes you wonder, what else were they doing back then?
Yeah.
I mean, what else did those early DBIR reports tell us?
Well, one thing that really stands out is the significant role of human error.
Oh, human error. That's a good one.
It has always been a major factor in data breaches. I mean, even back then, phishing attacks were already a major problem.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not.
Wow.
And the DBIR reports show that attackers were getting very good at crafting these convincing emails that tricked people into clicking malicious links or giving up sensitive information.
I mean, an email, it seems so simple.
I know. You would think people would be more aware.
Well, there, yeah.
But those reports show that even back then, phishing was a leading cause of breaches.
Oh, wow. So the DBIR data, it showed that people, they were falling for these scams.
Yeah.
Were they sharing statistics or anything?
Yeah, one report actually found that simply sending 3 phishing emails to a group of employees significantly increased the likelihood of at least one person clicking a malicious link.
3 emails.
Just 3.
Wow. So that really highlights the importance of security awareness training.
Absolutely. And building a culture of security within organizations
Right.
so that everyone understands the risks.
Right. So from the very beginning, it's been this combination of technical vulnerabilities and human fallibility.
Yeah. A 1-2 punch.
A 1-2 punch. That's a good way to put it. And, as we move into the early 2010s, the DBIR reports really start to show this shift in the landscape, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I mean, if we look at the period between 2013 and 2017, we start to see cyber espionage really take center stage.
Cyber espionage.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Espionage itself isn't new, right?
Right.
But what's interesting is that attackers, particularly state-affiliated actors, they were becoming increasingly sophisticated in their methods.
Really?
And they were going after things like intellectual property and trade secrets.
It's almost like the stakes were getting higher.
Much higher. It's like the cyber battleground was heating up. Nation states were getting more involved.
Yeah. And the DBIR reports, they actually started to categorize attacks based on their complexity, didn't they?
They did.
How difficult they were to pull off.
Right. They range from basic attacks, something that could be carried out by, relatively unskilled individuals, all the way to advanced attacks that required significant resources and expertise.
You've got these different levels.
Yeah. And the rise of state-sponsored cyber espionage that really pushed the needle towards those higher levels of complexity.
So it's pretty alarming to think, right, that there are groups out there that can pull off these highly sophisticated attacks. I mean, this is like something out of a spy movie.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's happening in the real world.
Uh-huh.
And it underscores the importance of organizations, particularly those dealing with sensitive information, to have really robust security measures in place.
To protect themselves.
Yes.
Yeah. And it wasn't just digital means either that they were using.
Right. The DBIR reports from this period also highlight a rise in physical attacks.
Physical.
Yeah, like ATM and gas pump skimmers.
Oh, skimmers. Okay, yeah.
Those little devices designed to steal card data.
I remember those.
Yeah?
Yeah, they got really sophisticated too.
They did.
It's a good reminder that security isn't just about firewalls and software.
Right.
It's about protecting your physical assets as well. So we've got this, evolution of cyber espionage. We've got these increasingly complex attacks. And then we've got, this reminder that physical security is still a thing. What else, kind of mid-2010s, what else was happening?
That's when we start to see the emergence of compliance standards and regulations.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. The GDPR in Europe.
Yes.
CCPA in California.
Exactly. These regulations signaled a major shift in how businesses handled personal data. It was a big deal.
It was a huge deal. I mean, they forced organizations to really think about how they collect, store, and use personal information.
Right. And the DBIR reports actually show a correlation between compliance with these standards and a reduction in data breaches.
Really? So compliance actually works?
It does.
Wow.
While compliance doesn't guarantee immunity from attacks,
Sure.
it does force organizations to implement better security practices.
Okay.
And that, in turn, raises their overall security posture.
Okay, so as we move into, the mid-2010s, we've got this convergence of increasingly sophisticated cyber attacks, the rise of cyber espionage, and the growing importance of compliance and data privacy. It's a pretty dynamic period, wouldn't you say?
It really is, and it really sets the stage for even more significant changes as we move into the second half of the 2010s and beyond.
Well, I can't wait to dive into that. But we're going to have to take a quick break.
Okay.
We'll be right back with more of our deep dive into data breaches.
Sounds good. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of data breaches. Looking at it through, the lens of those Verizon DBIR reports.
Yeah, those DBIR reports, they really give us this incredible historical perspective.
A front row seat to this evolution of cybercrime.
Right, exactly. And in part one, we journeyed through those early years, saw the rise of cyber espionage, the increasing sophistication of the attacks.
Things were definitely starting to heat up.
Yeah, no kidding. And as we move into the late 2010s, there's this one threat in particular that starts to dominate the landscape. I'm talking about ransomware.
Oh, ransomware, absolutely. It was a game changer. I mean, the period between 2018 and 2024, it just exploded.
It really did. And for anyone listening who maybe isn't super familiar with ransomware, can you give us a quick definition?
Sure. Ransomware essentially holds your data hostage.
Like literally hostage?
Yeah, you get locked out of all your files, you can't access critical information, and then you get a ransom note.
A digital ransom note.
Exactly, demanding payment for the key to unlock your data.
And those DBIR reports from this period, they paint a really stark picture of just how bad it got.
The impact was immense. Organizations faced ransom demands that were, sometimes reaching up to 24% of their total revenue.
24%? That's
It's
crazy.
a huge number, and the DBIR, they became invaluable, this resource, for understanding how these ransomware gangs were working.
Like what their tactics were.
Exactly, because they were constantly evolving.
Yeah, they were evolving so quickly. And it wasn't just large organizations that were being targeted, right?
Right. I mean, the data, it showed that everyone was vulnerable. Small businesses, municipalities, even hospitals and schools.
I mean, anyone with valuable data.
Anyone was fair game. And it highlighted the need for, strong cybersecurity measures, but across all sectors, not just these big corporations.
Okay, so we've got this huge rise in ransomware. It's affecting everyone. And we know these DBIR reports, they also provide these incredible insights into who's behind these attacks.
They do. And while, organized crime that remained a dominant force driven by financial gain, we also started to see this blurring of the lines.
Between?
Cyber criminals and nation-state actors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it became really difficult to know who was behind an attack. Was it purely financially motivated, or was it part of like a larger geopolitical agenda?
So you've got like different players with different motives.
Exactly. It all gets mixed up.
It's like a spy novel almost.
It does. It does.
With these alliances shifting. And the DDIR reports, I mean, they help to untangle all of that.
Right. Yeah, they provide this framework for understanding this incredibly complex threat landscape.
Okay, so the threat landscape is evolving, the tactics are evolving.
Huh.
The DBIR reports, they also highlighted something called living off the land techniques. And I got to be honest, I'm not super familiar with that. Can you explain what that means?
Sure. So think about it this way. Instead of like introducing new malware, which could be detected by security software, these attackers are using legitimate tools and processes.
Legitimate tools.
Yeah, stuff that's already on the victim's system.
Okay.
And they use that to carry out their attacks.
So wait, they're using the victim's own tools to attack them.
It's like a thief using your own tools to break into your house.
Wow, okay, I see how that could be very effective, but also super unsettling.
Yeah. And it makes these activities so much harder to spot because they blend in with normal system operations. It's stealthy.
Okay. So what can organizations do to protect themselves against these living off the land attacks?
The reports emphasize the need to move beyond signature-based detection.
Okay, what does that mean?
So traditional security tools, they rely on, signatures or known malware patterns. And that doesn't work here.
Right, because they're using legitimate tools.
Exactly. So you need more advanced approaches like behavioral analytics.
So look for unusual activity.
Exactly. Even if it doesn't match those known threat patterns, you got to be proactive.
Okay. And on top of all that, we've got these attackers motivated by financial gain, geopolitical agendas. I mean, it paints a pretty daunting picture, doesn't it?
It does.
But the good news is the DBIR reports, they also provided insights into how to actually defend against these attacks.
They did. And understanding these common attack vectors, that's crucial.
Let's break it down. What are the most common ways that these attackers were getting in?
Hacking remained a top choice. I mean, things like brute force attacks, the use of stolen credentials, those were huge. And the reports really drove home the importance of the basics: strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, regular updates.
It's amazing. It's like we've been talking about this for years.
I know.
And yet, weak passwords are still a massive problem.
They are, both for individuals and organizations. It's a constant battle.
It is. And then alongside hacking, social engineering continued to be a highly effective attack vector.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, social engineering, it preys on human psychology, it preys on our trust in others, and it's very effective.
And we talked about phishing in the first part, but it sounds like that also evolved.
Oh, it did. It did. We started to see more sophisticated techniques like pretexting and business email compromise.
Where the attackers are impersonating trusted individuals.
Exactly. And the DBIR reports, I mean, they really dug into how these attacks work so that organizations could educate their employees and help them build resilience against these very manipulative tactics.
Right. And speaking of, kind of building resilience, you mentioned earlier that compliance standards like GDPR and CCPA, those played a significant role. How did the DBIR reports reflect that?
Well, they showed a really clear correlation between complying with these standards and a reduction in data breaches.
So compliance actually does help.
It does. It does.
It's not just a bureaucratic hurdle.
It's not. It's an investment in security. I mean, those DBIR reports provided compelling evidence for that.
Okay. And then as we get to the end of this period, another game changer emerges. We start to see artificial intelligence, AI, really entering the cybersecurity landscape.
Yeah, AI. It's this double-edged sword.
How so?
Well, on one hand, it has the potential to really enhance our defenses, automate threat detection and response. But on the other hand, attackers are also using AI to create more sophisticated attacks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, things like AI-powered phishing campaigns, AI-generated malware. I mean, it's like a technological arms race.
It is. It is. And the reports, what did they say about that? I mean, what should organizations be doing?
They emphasize the need to really understand AI, both its benefits and its risks.
So learn about it and figure out how to leverage it for defense, but also how to mitigate the risks.
Precisely.
Okay. Well, this has been fascinating. We've gone from the rise of ransomware and the evolving tactics of these threat actors to the increasing importance of compliance and now the emergence of AI.
It's a lot.
It is. It is. But our journey through the DBIR reports, it's not over yet. We've got one more part to go.
That's right. We're going to explore more recent trends, we'll look at some specific case studies, and we'll discuss the key takeaways for anyone who wants to navigate this constantly evolving world of data breaches.
I can't wait. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
And we are back for the final part of our deep dive into data breaches. We've been using those Verizon DBIR reports, those data breach investigations reports, as our guide, going all the way back to 2008 and up to 2024. And in the last two parts, we really saw how the whole landscape of cybercrime has changed, right? From those early payment card breaches to the rise of ransomware and even the use of AI.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. So what's going on now? What are the most recent trends that are popping up in those DBIR reports?
Well, when you look at those latest reports, the ones from 2020 to 2024, one of the biggest things that jumps out is just the sheer scale and the sophistication of these attacks.
So it's getting worse.
I mean, in a way, yes, the attackers, they're definitely upping their game. We're seeing this move away from those opportunistic attacks, the ones where they just kind of stumble across a vulnerability and exploit it.
Right.
And they're moving towards these highly targeted campaigns, almost like, military-style operations.
Like they're planning it out?
Absolutely. The DBIR reports, they talk a lot about the growing role of intelligence gathering in these breaches.
Okay, so they're actually doing research.
Yeah. They're using all sorts of techniques, things like open source intelligence, OSINT as it's called, social engineering, to gather as much info as they can about their targets.
Well, they're learning about their systems, their vulnerabilities.
Exactly, and even their personnel.
Wow, so it's like they're building profiles on their targets, trying to find the weakest link.
It's very strategic, and that's why the basics, things like strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, regular updates, and employee training, all of that is just more crucial now than ever before.
I mean, it's like locking your doors and windows.
It is. It might not stop the most determined attacker, but it will deter those opportunistic ones who are just looking for a quick and easy target.
Makes sense. But even with those basic precautions, I mean, attackers are clever. They're always finding new ways to get in, right?
Right, and the DBIR reports talk about this rise in what's called living off the land techniques.
We talked about that a little in part 2.
We did. And this is where attackers, instead of bringing in new malware that could be detected, they actually use legitimate tools and processes that are already present on the victim system.
Can you give me an example? Like, how would that work?
Sure. Let's say an attacker gains access to a system with admin privileges, right? Instead of introducing new malware, they might use something like PowerShell, which is a legitimate system administration tool.
Okay.
And they'll use that to move around the network, escalate their privileges, and ultimately get the data they want.
So they're using the victim's own tools against them.
Exactly. And it makes it incredibly difficult to detect because it all looks like normal system activity.
So traditional security tools, they're not going to pick that up.
Not necessarily. That's why the DBIR reports recommend going beyond that signature-based detection, looking for known malware patterns,
Okay.
and moving towards things like behavioral analytics, threat hunting, where you're looking for unusual activity, anomalies, even if they don't match any known threats.
So you're trying to spot those subtle clues that something is off.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've talked about how attackers are getting in. But what about their motives? I mean, is it still all about money?
Well, financial gain is definitely still a huge driver, but the DBIR reports also show that data exfiltration and extortion are becoming more and more common.
So they're stealing data and then holding it for ransom.
Exactly. Ransomware is a perfect example of that. We talked about it before, but they're not just encrypting data anymore.
Right.
They're stealing it and threatening to release it publicly unless they get paid.
And I imagine that could be incredibly damaging for organizations.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you lose access to your data. That's bad enough.
Right.
But then there's the potential for reputational damage, regulatory fines, legal action. It's a nightmare.
And no one is immune, are they?
No. I mean, the reports show everyone's a target. Small businesses, municipalities, hospitals, schools, anyone with valuable data.
So attackers are casting a wider net, trying to hit as many targets as possible.
And the ways they extort money, those are getting more sophisticated too. I mean, some attackers are even threatening to launch DDoS attacks.
DDoS attacks, those are those distributed denial of service attacks.
Right, where they flood a website with traffic, make it unavailable.
So it's not just about stealing data anymore. It's about causing disruption, chaos.
It is. And in our increasingly interconnected world, I mean, that disruption can have a huge ripple effect.
Now, one thing that keeps coming up, and it's bit unsettling, is this blurring of lines between cybercrime and nation-state activity. What are the DBIR reports saying about that?
Well, they seem to suggest that this convergence, it's probably going to continue. We're going to see more collaboration between cyber criminals and nation-state actors. They'll share information, resources, maybe even work together on attacks.
And that makes attribution a nightmare, right?
It does. I mean, how do you figure out who's responsible for an attack if you can't even tell who's behind it?
And if you can't figure out who's responsible, it makes it that much harder to deter future attacks.
Exactly. It's a very complex and constantly evolving threat landscape. But the good news is these DBI reports, they give us a way to peek behind the curtain, understand how it all works.
Okay, so to make it a bit more real, can we talk about some specific examples, like case studies that are mentioned in these reports?
Absolutely. One that really stands out is the Equifax breach from 2017. You might remember that one.
I do, yeah.
Hackers, they exploited a vulnerability in a web application, and they were able to steal the personal information of over 147 million people.
It was a huge breach.
It was. And it really highlighted the importance of patching vulnerabilities quickly.
Because the consequences of not doing so can be devastating.
Absolutely. Another interesting one is the SolarWinds attack from 2020.
Yeah.
Attackers, they were able to insert malicious code into software updates for a network management platform.
Yeah.
And because this platform was used by so many organizations, including government agencies and Fortune 500 companies, it gave them access to a ton of sensitive information.
So they exploited that trust that organizations have in their software vendors.
Exactly. It showed just how important supply chain security is, making sure that the software you're using is actually trustworthy.
It's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
So we've got these sophisticated attackers, these stealthy techniques, this mix of motives, and all these high-profile breaches happening. What are the big takeaways here? Like, what can people listening do to protect themselves?
Well, the DBIR reports, they offer some really practical advice. First, they emphasize that security is a shared responsibility.
Okay.
It's not just up to the IT department. It's everyone's responsibility.
We all have a role to play.
We do. It's about creating that culture of security, making sure everyone understands the risks, and they take steps to mitigate them.
So education and awareness are key.
They are. Second, a multi-layered approach to defense is essential.
What does that mean?
It means you don't rely on just one security measure. You need a combination of things. Technical controls like firewalls, intrusion detection systems, strong policies and procedures, ongoing employee training.
So it's about building a defense in depth, making sure you have multiple layers of protection.
Exactly. Third, incident response planning is crucial.
So if something does happen, you have a plan.
Exactly. No matter how strong your defenses are, there's always a chance that someone will find a way in. Having a plan in place to quickly detect, contain, and remediate a breach can really minimize the damage and help you recover faster.
It's like a fire drill, right? You might not ever need it, but if you do, you're glad you practiced.
Exactly. And finally, staying informed is so important. This threat landscape, it's constantly evolving. New threats are popping up all the time. And the DBIR reports, they're a great way to stay up to date on the latest trends and the best practices.
So to sum it up, it's about building that culture of security, implementing a multi-layered defense, having an incident response plan, and always staying informed.
That's it. And remember, cybersecurity, it's a journey, not a destination. It's this ongoing process of assessing, improving, adapting.
I love that. Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap things up. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the world of data breaches. We hope you found it informative and maybe even a little empowering.
We did too. And remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand about the threats, the better we can protect ourselves and our organizations.
So stay safe out there in the digital world.